Hey everyone, it's Intel here, and welcome back to another video. So, this mouse right here might look like your average Glorious Model D wireless, in which you'd be right, this is a Glorious Model D wireless, but what you wouldn't know is that it's modded. This Glorious Model D wireless has had its stock switches replaced with switches that are way better for clicking fast. Now, switch swapping is something that is not new. People have been doing it for quite a while, but what people haven't explained is how this can dramatically help improve your CPS. Take this Glorious Model D wireless for instance. In my original review on it, I said that it was a really good mouse, but I really didn't like the weight of the switches, and they were sort of hard to spam click for me. But after modding my mouse, the switches on this mouse feel absolutely incredible. They are so easy to spam click, it's insane. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining to you guys exactly how I modded this mouse, as well as how switch swapping can dramatically help improve your CPS depending on what mouse you're using. One more thing that I do want to say before I get started is that if you enjoy my content, I'd really appreciate it if you consider checking out my Lunar client cosmetics in the description below. Every purchase of my cosmetics does help support me as a creator, and it does help me fund videos like this that involve spending money on certain stuff. So if you use Lunar client, you like the way that my cosmetics look, and you want to help support me as a content creator, then make sure to check the description below. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into the video. Okay, so before you even consider switch swapping, there's a lot of things that I need to explain first. The first thing is the difference between different mouse switches, and there's a lot to unpack here. Mice, just like keyboards, have a lot of different switch variants. The three most mainstream ones are Omron, Kailh, and TTC switches. I know that there are more mouse switch brands out there, but these are the three most mainstream ones, and they're the only ones in my opinion that are worth considering. Omron switches are the default switches used on most gaming mice. So for example, Logitech mice use Omron switches, so do the wired Glorious mice, many of the Final mice, and a lot of the older Razer and Steel series mice all use Omron switches. The next switch type are Kailh switches, and these have been slowly becoming more mainstream in many gaming mice. All of the wireless Glorious mice, excluding the Model O wireless, all use Kailh switches, as well as a lot of smaller gaming brands that are still really good, like Endgame for example. They're still nowhere near as mainstream as Omron switches, but they're pretty popular with mouse switch enthusiasts. And then there are TTC switches, and these are even less mainstream than Kailh switches, and the only mouse that I actually know that uses TTC switches is the HyperX Pulsefire Haste. So what are the main differences between all of these switches? Well, they all slightly differ from each other in sound, tactility, feeling, but most importantly, weight. And this is where it starts to get complicated. Weight is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of a mouse switch, especially when it comes to PvP, and all of these switches have a ton of different weight variations. I'm gonna throw up a spreadsheet made by Ents on screen showing the different actuation force of a ton of different types of switches. What's really confusing is that there's a ton of different variations of the same switch type that all vary in weight. Take a look at Omron 20Ms, for example. As you can see in the spreadsheet, there are at least 3 different types of variations of Omron 20Ms, and they all vary dramatically with their actuation force. The big problem is that most gaming mouse companies don't tell you which variation of the switch their mouse is using. For example, both Glorious and Logitech claim that they use Omron 20Ms for their switches, but they don't specify which exact Omron 20M variation they're using, and as it turns out, they're using variations with completely different weighting. Just to be clear, Glorious and Logitech aren't the only gaming companies that do this. Pretty much every gaming company doesn't specify what exact switch type they're using or how much it weighs. Like seriously guys, keyboards have solved this issue a long time ago. You either have red switches, brown switches, or blue switches most of the time. And even if you have some exotic non-cherry switch, they will almost always tell you the weighting of their switches. This is absolutely unacceptable because switch weighting does play a big factor in how good or bad a mouse is for certain games. But anyways, with that whole rant aside, who is actually going to benefit from switch swapping? If you're a Minecraft PvPer, or even if you're a Geometry Dash player, then you definitely want lighter switches in your mouse. If you're butterfly clicking, this isn't as big of a deal because you're already putting a lot of force slapping your fingers on your mouse click anyways. But if you're someone who normal or jitter clicks, then you're going to see a much bigger benefit using lighter switches. The first thing to do before jumping into switch swapping is trying to identify what switches your mouse is currently using. The mouse that I decided to switch swap was the Glorious Model D wireless, which uses Kailh switches. Unfortunately, Glorious does not specify what Kailh switches they are using in this mouse or what weight they are. But from my experience using the mouse, I did not like the switches and they felt too heavy for me. As you can see from the spreadsheet, there isn't really any variation of a Kailh switch that is super light, the lightest being Kailh GM8 switches with an actuation force of 60 grams. And while Kailh switches do generally feel a lot more tactile than other switches, which is why they're popular among enthusiasts, I don't think that Kailh switches are really that good for spam clicking, and there are definitely better alternatives. I ended up choosing to switch swap to the TTC Gold switches. Not the same TTC Gold switches that are used on the HyperX Pulsefire Haste though. The HyperX Pulsefire Haste uses TTC Gold dust-proof ADM switches. But of course they don't specify that because apparently we're we're living in the Stone Age. More specifically, I chose the TTC Gold dustproof 30M switches, which have an actuation force of 53 grams. These are among some of the lightest switches on this list, and they're even lighter than the ones that are used on my G Pro Wireless Superlight. Now, I do want to clarify once again that not every mouse is going to benefit from switch swapping. First of all, if you're using a mouse that uses optical switches, like some of the newer Razer mice or Rocat mice, switch swapping is not going to be an option for you to begin with. Currently, you can really only switch swap mechanical switches. And second of all, if you're already using a mouse that has really light switches, for example, the G Pro Wireless Superlight, the Superlight, by the way, has Omron 20Ms that have an actuation force of 57 grams, which isn't really that much heavier than the TTC Gold 30M switches. I don't think you'll see much of a benefit switch swapping the Superlight if you want lighter and spammier switches. However, it's still an option if you prefer switches that are more tactile and heavy. It really comes down to personal preference with how you want your switch to feel, but for Minecraft PvPers, I definitely think that lighter and spammier switches are the way to go. Okay, anyways, how do you switch swap your mouse? Well, there's two ways to do it, the easy way and the hard way. The easy way is commissioning someone else to do it for you. And then the hard way is doing it yourself, which requires you to deassemble your mouse and desolder the switches that are inside of it. I opted for the easy way, which is just commissioning someone else to do it for me. Ents has their own switch swapping service, so I stuck with that, and I'll leave it down in the description if you're interested. If you want to actually do it yourself and save money, then I'll leave a video down in the description that will show you how. But I think that most people probably don't own a soldering iron and they don't have the confidence to do it themselves, so I would recommend sticking with a switch swapping service. Anyways, I sent them my mouse and specified that I wanted TTC Gold 30M switches, and a week later, I got my mouse back. Unfortunately, if you commission someone else to switch swap your mouse for you, then the total price for it is not cheap. The total that I had to pay for the service itself as well as the new switches was $48. And because opening up your mouse to switch swap it ruins your mouse feet, I had to pay an additional $12 for new mouse feet, so the total came out to be $60 for this mod. That's around the price of buying a whole new mouse entirely. I want to clarify that I'm not complaining about the price for the service in any way, but if you're committed to switch swapping your mouse, then you better be sure that this is your endgame mouse, or else you're wasting $60. Anyways, when all is said and done, the end result is absolutely amazing. The new switches on my glorious Model D wireless are so much better for jitter clicking and spam clicking. It's really a night and day difference compared to the Kailh switches that the mouse used to use, which were, in my opinion, not ideal for spam clicking. In fact, this mouse now feels easier to jitter click on than the G Pro Wireless Superlight, which is amazing because I have never found a mouse that has been easier to jitter click than on the Superlight. In terms of jitter clicking, I can now maintain a higher average CPS jitter clicking on my Model D wireless with the TTC Gold switches than compared to the Kailh switches. I think the biggest difference for me is how much more consistent I am jitter clicking on this mouse now. With the Kailh switches, I felt like I would randomly stop jitter clicking at times with the Model D wireless, but with these TTC Gold 30M switches, that barely happens to me anymore. You can visually see this when I try to one stack, and hopefully this footage shows just how much better the TTC Gold 30M switches are at spam and jitter clicking than the Kailh switches. I also forgot to mention that because I'm putting less effort into clicking as fast as I can because of these lighter switches, that actually does help with my aim being a little bit more precise while I'm jitter clicking and spam clicking. So the end result is that my average CPS is slightly higher, I can jitter click much more consistently, and my aim is slightly better while jitter clicking using this mouse with the new switches, which for me is an amazing result and was definitely worth it. I'll throw up a sound test right now comparing the sound of the TTC Gold switches on my Model D wireless with the Kailh switches used on my Model O- wireless. Okay, so don't click off the video just yet. There's a few things I still want to say that are important. First of all, if you're considering switch swapping, then I hard vouch for the TTC Gold 30M switches if you're looking for something that's super spammable and light. If you're looking for other recommendations, I haven't tried them, but I've heard that Japanese Omrons are also really good as well. They have a 51 gram actuation force, which is actually slightly lighter than the TTC Gold 30Ms. I do think that they have a significantly lower lifespan though, so keep that in mind. If you're not a Minecraft or Geometry Dash player and spammy and light switches isn't isn't something that you value, then I would probably recommend the Kailh GM switches for their tactility. There's the Kailh GM8, GM4, and GM2 switches, with the Kailh GM8s being the lightest at 60 grams, and then the GM2s being the heaviest at 75 grams, with the GM4s being right in the middle at 71 grams. I do also want to mention that while what switch you're using affects the weight of your mouse clicks, it's not the only thing that affects the weight of your mouse clicks. How the switches are implemented in the mouse also plays a significant role in how the clicks feel and how much they weigh. So make sure to be mindful of that before you commit to switch swapping your mouse. Anyways guys, that's pretty much it for this video. I actually think I'm gonna try maining the Model D wireless again because of how good the switches feel now, so we'll see how that goes. Thank you guys so much for watching, it really does mean a lot to me. If you want to help support me as a content creator, then you can consider purchasing my Lunar client cosmetics, which are down in the description below. Thank you so much again for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this video, and with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.